Welcome to today's explainer. Okay, let's dive into this, because today we're exploring one of the most significant and massively influential texts in human history, the ancient Mahabharata. But we aren't just looking at it as some dusty historical document or a simple fireside story. No, we're going to look at how this incredible text frames itself. From the very beginning, the Mahabharata presents itself not just as an epic tale, but literally as the ultimate pitch to the human soul. It makes promises and claims about its own value that are absolutely staggering. So, if you've ever wondered how a thousands of years old narrative hooks its audience and convinces them that it holds the actual secrets of the universe, well, you are in exactly the right place. To navigate this incredibly deep philosophical source material, we're going to follow a clear roadmap, starting with the unanswered burning questions, moving to a monumental epic scale, exploring the ultimate life blueprint, and finally ending with unlocking the cosmic rewards. Starting with Section 1, the unanswered burning questions, or King Janamajaya's interrogation. Right off the bat, this text hooks you. It doesn't waste time with a slow, wandering introduction. It starts with pure tension. Specifically, King Janamajaya's intense, rapid-fire interrogation of a sage. See, the king has heard a brief summary of the great acts of his ancestors, but he's fundamentally unsatisfied. He demands the full, unvarnished truth, because he's plagued by this massive logical contradiction. He wants to know, why on earth would innocent, incredibly capable people calmly suffer the persecution of the wicked? According to the text, the virtuous Pandavas were entirely capable of avenging themselves upon their rival royal faction, the Kurus. Yet, they didn't. They just took it. Janamejaya is essentially asking the most relatable question ever. Make it make sense. Why would good people let themselves be destroyed when they have the power to stop it? Building the tension, the king gets even more specific. And honestly, we have to ask the same thing about figures like the mighty Bhima. The text describes Bhima as possessing the staggering strength of 10,000 elephants. Just let that image sit in your mind for a second. 10,000 elephants. Yet, despite being profoundly wronged, and despite having the physical power to just utterly crush his oppressors, Bhima restrained his immense wrath. Why? What could possibly compel a warrior of that unmatched, terrifying physical dominance to hold back? And the hits just keep coming. Continuing this rapid-fire questioning, the king points out another glaring issue. Why did mighty, intensely loyal warriors like Nakula, Sadeva, and Arjuna faithfully follow Yudhishthira? The text explicitly states that Yudhishthira, despite being known as the foremost of all virtuous men, literally the son of Dharma himself, was deeply addicted to the evil habit of gambling. He suffered an absolute excess of affliction because of this vice. So why would an entire retinue of unparalleled fighters tie their fates to a leader with such a destructive, ruinous habit? Now, what's really interesting here is how perfectly this captures the central paradox of the whole story. On one side, you have terrifying, world-altering power. You've got Bhima's strength of 10,000 elephants, or the chaste Krishna, who the text notes could literally burn her enemies with her wrathful eyes. But on the other side, you have their baffling submission and calm suffering of the wicked Kauravas. This contrast creates massive narrative tension. It demands an explanation. And it's this exact tension that the sage uses to justify telling the entire epic in the first place. Which brings us to Section 2, a monumental epic scale constructing the cosmos. So to answer these burning questions, the sage tells the king he must hear the entire history composed by the great rishi or sage, Vyasa. And this reveals the awe-inspiring magnitude of the solution. This isn't just some quick little fable to explain away the hero's strange behavior. It is a monumental construction of a literary cosmos. The text outlines the immense dedication required, stating that it took Vyasa exactly 3 years to complete this work. But get this, it wasn't just casual writing. The text specifically notes that he rose daily, purified himself, and performed intense ascetic devotions while composing it. It frames the creation of the epic itself as a supreme act of spiritual discipline. And let's look at what that 3-year undertaking of daily purification and ascetic devotion actually resulted in. A staggering 100,000 sacred slokas, or verses. 100,000! The text proudly declares this an undertaking of immeasurable mental power. It is purposefully overwhelming the listener with its sheer volume, establishing absolute authority through its unprecedented, magnificent scale. Grounding ourselves in the specific terminology of the source, the text reveals that this massive work originally calls itself Jaya, which translates to victory. This is fascinating because it explicitly frames the epic as a highly practical, essential tool for the ruling class. It boldly states that this is a history that should be heard by kings desirous of victory, explicitly so they can bring the whole world under subjection and conquer their foes. It is literally pitching itself as the ultimate strategy guide for geopolitical dominance. Furthermore, the text makes an unbelievable claim about its more famous title. The word Mahabharata means the history of the exalted birth of the Bharata princes, but it goes a huge step further. The text claims that simply knowing this very etymology, literally just understanding what the title means, is a specific act that miraculously purifies mortals of all their sins. The epic is asserting that its very name holds divine, cleansing power. Moving right along to Section 3, the ultimate life blueprint, a guide for the universe. You see, the epic doesn't just want to sit on a shelf as a massive, untouchable holy book. It pitches itself as a highly practical, universal blueprint for your daily life. Vyasa promises that this sacred history contains crucial, comprehensive instruction on the 4 fundamental pillars of human existence. It covers Dharma, which is virtue and sacred science; Artha, dealing with wealth, profit, and worldly success; Kama, the pursuit of pleasure; and ultimately Moksha, the desire for spiritual salvation and liberation. By covering all 4, the text claims it addresses literally every single motivation a human being could possibly have. So, the crucial point we need to take away here is that the Mahabharata insists it isn't merely a story of human drama or political intrigue. It elevates itself to the highest possible spiritual authority. It declares itself to be a holy Purana, an ancient, sacred narrative entirely equivalent to the Vedas themselves. It's packed with divine accounts of sacred figures like the gods, royal sages, Mahadeva, the goddess Parvati, and the sinless Kesava. By aligning itself with the ultimate sacred texts, it demands absolute reverence from its audience. And finally, we hit Section 4, unlocking the cosmic rewards, or the ultimate return on investment. Bridging the ancient to the modern, I have to ask you directly. What if a single story could cleanse your deepest regrets, bring you massive worldly success, and explain the entire universe? Because that is exactly the proposition the Mahabharata makes in its final pitch. The epic perfectly balances immediate earthly desires with ultimate cosmic rewards. On the worldly side, it promises that hearing it will result in begetting heroic children, gaining completely obedient servants, and curing maladies. But on the spiritual side, it promises that readers will attain the world of Brahman, acquire inexhaustible virtue, and even become equal to the very gods. Talk about an all-encompassing value proposition. To really drive this home, the text uses a beautiful, surprising, and highly evocative metaphor. It promises that a person, even someone who is described as cruel and deeply sinful, will escape from all their sins simply by hearing this history. It compares this sudden purification to the sun escaping the dark grasp of the demon Rahu after a solar eclipse is over. It's this incredibly powerful visual of sudden, blinding light breaking through absolute darkness. And the material value placed on the physical text itself is equally astounding. The epic describes itself as a mine of gems, as vast and rich as the entire ocean or the great mountain Meru. It claims that simply giving a copy of the Mahabharata to someone who asks for it is the spiritual equivalent of gifting the entire earth with her belt of seas. Furthermore, it states that listening with reverence provides the exact same spiritual fruit as performing the most massive, elite royal rituals, the Rajasuya and the horse sacrifices. We end today with the epic's ultimate mic drop claim. It's a provocative, absolute statement that perfectly summarizes the text's staggering ambition. It says, whatever is spoken about virtue, wealth, pleasure, and salvation may be seen elsewhere, but whatever is not contained in this is not to be found anywhere. It essentially says, if it matters, it's in here. If it's not in here, well, it simply doesn't exist. So the real question is, are you ready to open the pages and see what the universe actually looks like? Thanks for joining this explainer.